Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the preview for the 2023 Bahrain Grand Prix, the first race of a brand new season, and it feels so good to be saying that again. Launches are over, testing is complete, all that's left to do now is actually go racing. Bring it on. As is always the case, though, with these race weekend previews, there's a lot to get through, so I'm just going to jump straight into it, starting with a look at the circuit. Oh, it's so good to be back. So, for the third year in a row, the F1 season kicks off in Sakhir, and this weekend will be the 19th running of the Bahrain Grand Prix, with the first event taking place in 2004. Although this will actually be the 20th time the circuit has held an F1 race, as we had two races in 2020, as I'm sure you'll remember, one around the usual layout and one around the outer loop. That race, all the way back in 2004, was the first Formula One World Championship event to be held in the Middle East, and 2011 aside, the circuit has been a staple of the calendar ever since, and 2023 will be the fifth time the circuit has hosted the opening round of the season. A lap of the Bahrain International Circuit is 5.412 kilometers long. If you work in miles, that's 3.363, and is made up of a total of 15 corners, with 57 racing laps scheduled for Sunday's race. And the race lap record is still held by Pedro de la Rosa, who posted a 1:31.447 back in 2005. There will once again be 3 DRS zones this year, with the first between turns 3 and 4, the second running between turns 10 and 11, and the third one runs down the start-finish straight. However, there has been a slight tweak to that final zone this year, with the activation point being pushed back 80 metres and will now be 250 metres after turn 15, rather than the 170 metres we had last year. Over the years, including the Sakhir Grand Prix, we've seen a total of 11 different pole sitters at the circuit, with Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton sharing the record for the most poles with 3 each. 9 drivers have taken victory at the track, the first being Michael Schumacher for Ferrari, with Lewis Hamilton having notched up the most overall with 5 wins. And of course, who can forget last year's race, which was won by Charles Leclerc, following an exciting battle for the lead with Max Verstappen before the Dutchman later retired. What a battle that was. Leclerc went on, of course, to lead home his teammate in a Ferrari 1-2, with Lewis Hamilton taking the final step on the podium. I don't think it's controversial to say, though, that the feel-good story of that race was surely Kevin Magnussen's 5th place finish for Haas. And by the way, that win for Leclerc ended a run of 3 consecutive wins at the track for Mercedes and Hamilton. And what's really interesting about that stat is that 3 is also the number of dry tyre compounds available across a race weekend. Oh yes, you guessed it, for the first time this season, it is tyre talk time. I did contemplate getting rid of these, but I just couldn't do that to you. I'm sure there are some people wishing I had. But anyway, the compounds available for this weekend are the hard C1, the medium C2, and the soft C3, which, in case you missed it over the winter, are not the hardest options, because for 2023, the Pirelli range now runs from the hardest C0 compound to the softest C5 compound, the C0 being last year's C1, and this year's C1 is a brand new compound. And Mario Isola explains in the press release that whilst the new C1 is entirely new, it is actually based on last year's C2 tyre, which allows the manufacturer to reduce the performance gap between the harder compounds in the range. What are we looking at in terms of strategy then? Well, last year's winning strategy was a 3-stopper, although that does include a late stop under the safety car with just 11 laps remaining in the race. Just for a comparison, the race in 2021 was a 2-stopper, so expect around 2 stops again this year. The track does have some very abrasive asphalt, and it does get very hot, with Pirelli saying surface temperatures can reach 45 degrees Celsius during the day. But of course, with the race being run in the evening, those temperatures will be much lower for lights out, dropping by at least 15 degrees. It is usually a tough one on the tyres, though, due to the track surface, temperatures, and the nature of the circuit layout. My point being, it's going to be tough to make a 1-stopper work, so expect at least 2. The undercut is fairly powerful in Bahrain, so expect to see teams make some late calls to pit to try and get the upper hand over those ahead. The safety car could also play its part, with each of the last 5 races at the track featuring at least 1 full safety car period, so don't be surprised to see another one this weekend. And last year's fastest pit stop, by the way, was 2.31 seconds by McLaren, and the pit lane lost time is around about 22 seconds, excluding the time it takes to stop. Apart from the heat, the weather isn't likely to have an impact on the race, and by weather, by the way, I mean rain, with the forecast at time of recording saying, quite simply, it'll be hot and dry all weekend. Perhaps not a surprise given the track is in the desert, with highs for qualifying expected to hit around 23 degrees, and for the start of the race on Sunday, temperatures are currently forecast to be ever so slightly warmer at 24 degrees, and as was the case last year, that's as of late Wednesday afternoon, which is why I'm keeping the weather forecast in these previews a bit shorter this season. More often than not last year, they seemed to be wrong by the time we got to the weekend. And your schedule for this one is pretty much what you'd expect. No great surprises here. FP1 gets the weekend and the season underway from 11:30 a.m. GMT, and that is followed by FP2 later that afternoon from 3 p.m. FP3 starts at 11:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, and just a reminder that most practice sessions will once again be 1 hour long this season. The first qualifying session of 2023 gets going from 3 p.m. on Saturday, and it is lights out for the race on Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. and once again that is in UK time, and once again I cannot wait. Now I'll be making my first predictions for the season shortly, but before we get to that point, there are a few things I wanted to mention ahead of the weekend. First of all, as I sit here and record this, there has been no official word on whether Lance Stroll will be fit to race this weekend. In case you missed it, the Canadian injured his wrist following what was described as a minor accident whilst training on his bike ahead of the new season. He missed testing last week, and speculation has been rife about his condition and who could replace him, with even Sebastian Vettel linked to a possible return to the team and F1. However, on Monday, the team issued a brief statement saying that they'll be giving Stroll every chance to be able to race if he can recover from his injury, of course. But if he is not declared fit to race, then Felipe Drugovich would be the one to take Stroll's seat until he is well enough to return. If there has been any news since recording, then there will have been something on screen by now to let you know, and I will also pop a link to an article or a statement in the description and comments with all the info you need. Moving on though, and one of the big questions coming into this weekend is, what is the running order? Look, the reality is we can't know for sure, of course, but from what we can read into testing, Red Bull look like the early favourites and appear to be very strong. Ferrari are certainly expected to be up there with them though, but there are big question marks over Mercedes, with some even claiming that Aston Martin could be a surprise and perhaps even be ahead of the Mercedes early on. In fact, Fernando Alonso, who to be fair did also say there are no miracles in F1, believes the team is actually slightly quicker than Ferrari in race trim, and the general feeling in the paddock and from those in the know is that Aston have at least taken a big step forward in 2023. It should be said, though, that team boss Mike Crack is trying to keep a lid on expectations, saying the team are realists, and the objective for 2023 is to improve compared to last season. I love this time of year, I really do, because we don't know where everyone is, and a whole weekend is going to be fascinating. Realistically, though, I'm fully expecting to see the top three remain Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes in that order, with Aston Martin P4. Behind that, all I can do really is shrug. Alfa Romeo look decent in testing, and I can't help but feel Alpine have something up their sleeves. And just for the record, I really hope things end up being better for McLaren than they looked last week in testing. I'd also argue that no team looks to be cut well adrift at the back, so we could see some great racing in that midfield again this season. All speculation really, I know, so roll on qualifying and race day where we should start to get some answers. And finally, for this part, we have some drivers making their debuts this weekend and some new lineups to keep an eye on as well. Oscar Piastri will get his first race weekend outing for McLaren in Bahrain as he goes up against Lando Norris. And as I said during testing, that is the new pairing I am most looking forward to watching this season. Logan Sargent will get his F1 debut as well as he teams up with Alex Albon at Williams, and although he made his race debut at Monza last year, Nick De Vries is officially a rookie, his first full season of course, and will be at AlphaTauri with Yuki Tsunoda. Away from the rookies, I can't wait to watch the battle at Alpine as Pierre Gasly takes on Esteban Ocon. That could be really great to watch, and don't forget that Nico Hülkenberg is back again full-time this time and partners Kevin Magnussen at Haas. And although most people are fairly sure he will beat him comfortably over the course of 2023, I actually still find that whole dynamic between Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll at Aston Martin really interesting this year. I couldn't honestly tell you why, I just do. Right then, here we go. Time for me to make my first predictions of the season, and these are usually the toughest to make because we only have testing to go off. Usual disclaimer though, these are just for fun and you definitely should not be taking them too seriously. If you do disagree with mine though, feel free to let me know yours down in the comment section. I will also try and keep score of mine this year and look back at the end of the season at how badly I've inevitably done. But anyway, we're all going into this almost blind. Yes, we've had testing, but we can't always take that at face value. It does appear, as I've already said, that Red Bull look to have the early advantage, and that's not really all that surprising, to be honest. I'd have been more shocked coming into this year if they weren't the favourites. I will say, though, I found it really tough to read Ferrari in testing, but I don't think they're as far off Red Bull as some seem to think, and I reckon they will be right in the mix at the very front this weekend. And so I do believe it's between those two for the win, assuming no major incidents or reliability problems. So I will be going with Max Verstappen for pole and the win, and I'll say that Charles Leclerc will pick up P2 on Sunday. But I'm hoping for something similar to what we saw last year in Bahrain, although if I'm saying that, hopefully we can have a battle like that again, but a battle that lasts all the way to the checker flag in Abu Dhabi, please, teams. Come on. Just that simple. As it is the season opener, though, and in theory, anything could happen. Again, that is just in theory. I am going to go bold with my final podium pick. And just for a second, potentially naively, believe the pre-season hype and pop Fernando Alonso in third place. You never know and all that. At the very least, though, and as I've touched on already, it would be fun to see Aston and Mercedes in a close fight if the top two are a little bit too far away early on. Worst case scenario, though, for Aston is that they could well end up being best of the rest in fourth place come Sunday. And I know that might disappoint a few people because of all the hype around them, but that's a big step up from where they were at the end of last season and a massive step up from where they were at the start of last season. Elsewhere, and some extra bolder predictions, I do actually think Alfa Romeo could spring an early season surprise, and so I am going to put them in the fight with Alpine for 5th fastest this weekend, and even go as far as to say that Valtteri Bottas pulls off a great drive and a minimum of a top 8 finish. I'll go with Logan Sargent to make Q2 on his debut, and let's say, as mad as some of you might think this will sound, that another rookie, Oscar Piastri, finished ahead of his teammate on Sunday. Do you know, I do love a prediction, and yes, okay, I do quite enjoy a bit of speculation as well, you might have noticed, but I will be so pleased when all of that can stop and when I can stop saying things like you can't read too much into testing times, and we finally have some F1 racing to talk about. I cannot put into words just how excited I am for this weekend, and I am sure I am not alone on that one. That is it, though, for the Bahrain Grand Prix preview, but you can let me know your thoughts and your predictions ahead of the weekend in the comments section down below. And just seeing as it is the first race, what are your massively bold predictions? And which team do you think will spring a surprise in Bahrain? Now, I will be back soon with some more content as always, and don't forget to join me live shortly after the race on Sunday for the first reaction stream of the season. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like as it really does help the channel out, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.